Welcome. Hi, Christina here from Authentic Action Coaching. How is everyone doing this afternoon? I have just hot-footed it over from the Catalyst building. Big shout out to Jenny, Catherine Wharton and the crew for an amazing Women in Tech networking event. So yeah, hot-footed it across for week 3 of the Turbocharge Your Motivation series. For those of you who haven't caught the previous 2 weeks, we all started with the first M of 7 M's of motivation, which was around meaning. And for those of you who are thinking, meaning, why would you start there? Well, if you want to find out more, then you can more than welcome to go back and watch that. But the main thing around this series of turbocharging your motivation is to make sure that when motivation ebbs and flows, which it naturally does, that you can come back to this 7 M's of motivation framework to boost yourself again. And one of those boosters is to remind yourself of your why, of your purpose around why are you doing what you're doing. You know, there's a ton of psychological evidence and biological evidence actually to show that as human beings, we are purpose driven. And if we are passionate about contributing or making a change in the world, if we align a goal that we're working on, we can supercharge our motivation by tapping into, yes, that is why I'm doing it. That's what I'm trying to create. I mean, this morning was a beautiful example of that with the Women in Tech event. Spoke to so many passionate women about making real change in the industry, making accessible opportunities to other people, inclusivity, bringing everybody together, the power of community. And I see that again and again in many of the networking events I attend, that, you know, it's come from a baseline meaning of purpose to actually bring a collection of people together that are all trying to create the right environment to support each other on. So the first M of that turbocharging your motivation is all around meaning. So it's helping you revisit that. So you can come back to a purpose statement or something that you can revisit and remind yourself of, yes, that's what I'm shooting for. So it's almost your root of your why, but also, you know, your direction that you're facing in, your North Star, if you will. The second M that we covered last week was all about mindset, because obviously how we approach our goal and how we approach motivation is huge. And so for those who caught it, you'll have seen me don lots of different pairs of glasses. It's something I like to use when talking about mindset to help us think about perception in different ways. Often we hear the phrase banded around growth mindset, and that is something that I talked about, because essentially you can have a very fixed mindset, i.e. you think that you're right, you're kind of almost a bit closed and maybe super focused on something, whereas a growth mindset is much more open, much more curious, and being able to balance between those two in more of a self-aware way gives us more access to this bit of kit that's going to help us drive forward. So we're not getting stuck in the weeds and not open to opportunities. We're actually open yet not scattered. So it's about finding that sweet spot in how we perceive the world around us. How are we viewing it? What lens are we looking through? So last week I talked about this 7 levels of energy, which is a framework within the energy leadership system. So I'm a master practitioner within the ELI, which is the Energy Leadership Index Assessment. And it specifically is built around understanding your natural profile. So how do you see yourself? What are the beliefs you hold about yourself? How do you see your situation currently? And how do you perceive the world around you? Because that hugely influences how you think, how you feel, and then the actions that you do or don't take. So when we're thinking about motivation and mindset, how we can cultivate our state, and by that I mean how we feel in ourselves, because we can either feel energized, open, and curious, or defensive, closed, and nervous, for example. That is going to impact how much we are able to go and take action on the goals that we care about, helping us move towards what we want to achieve. So, meaning is the first one, then mindset, to help you identify, number one, where are you? How are you thinking? What is the story that you're telling yourself? Because we're all storytellers. We all perceive a situation in a certain way, and sometimes that can be to our disadvantage. So mindset is very much about awareness. It's about being compassionate with ourselves when we're maybe feeling a little demotivated, because let's face it, we can't just turn on the tap of motivation. Sometimes we've got to actually take action when we don't feel like it, which can then cultivate getting into a state of achievement where we can kind of start to generate a bit of dopamine once we start to feel that we're actually making progress. So, moving on to the third M for week 3 of this series, and it's all about mantras. Now, I just want to focus on the fact that some people might be listening and thinking, mantras, is that not a bit fluffy, a bit woo-woo? Well, I would invite you to open up your mind and to open up your curiosity, because mantra isn't just some spiritual woo-woo claptrap. No, actually, it is grounded in science. So let's look at what a mantra is. You could define a mantra by, it's a short, intentional phrase that focuses your mind and reinforces positive beliefs. So a belief is actually just a thought that you think over and over again till you believe it's true. And so if you saw a previous post, so every Monday, I like to put out a motivational quote or saying just to help you tap back into, kind of like your weekly mantra. And one of those is whether you believe you're right I'll start again. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So that was famously said by Henry Ford. And he pointed out that it is about being powered by your own self-belief. And with that, you will achieve things that you thought were never possible, because you can come from a place of belief and openness that actually you can do whatever you set your mind to. So the link to meaning and mantra, the mantra serves as a bit of an anchor, if you will, or a route into the values and goals that you've set yourself. So they're a reminder of the bigger picture, because sometimes we can get lost in the minutiae of the detail, and then suddenly you kind of can't see the woods for the trees. Added into the fact, if you don't feel like you're making progress, or maybe you've faced a few challenges, then you might start to feel like your motivation is waning. So if you can come up with a short, punchy phrase that actually reminds you of your meaning, of your why, and your mission, then that has the power to then re-energize you. So why do mantras work? It's a great question. So to tell you a little bit about the neuroscience behind mantras here, for those of you who maybe have come across the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm a big fan. I came across him about 5 years ago. He talks very much about the neurology of belief, with Dr. Bruce Lipton also. And he talks about neurons in the brain that fire together, wire together. What does that mean? Well, when you think about repeating a thought, It's strengthening the neural connection. So we have neural pathways that create our patterns of thought, our patterns of behavior. And the more we repeat a thought, the more we strengthen that neural connection associated with it. So over time, these pathways become automatic. So they form our beliefs and habits. So that's why when we think about a mantra, the shorter you can keep it, the more uplifting you can make it that is associated with your mission, then you can actually start to generate a feeling. So it's a logical thought plus a feeling. So our feelings are embodied. So you might say an emotion is energy in motion. And certain words carry certain energy because we associate things like empowered, uplifting, unstoppable, limitless. We have an association with those things. So it kind of broadens our perspective, it lifts us up so we can start to perceive things in a different way. Makes sense, right? So when you think about this, it begs the question, well, actually, neuroscientifically, the power of focused attention is actually huge. And research shows that when we focus on a positive affirmation or a saying and really feel it over and over again, that we activate the brain's prefrontal cortex. And that's responsible for decision making and focus. And so, what we're actually doing is calming the amygdala, which is the most primitive part of our brain. So, that could be activated when we're in fight or flight. So, if something's gone wrong, maybe we're feeling a bit stressed, maybe we don't feel like we're getting very far very fast. And so, we get a bit frustrated with ourselves. Or maybe there's an unexpected challenge that you're facing. That tends to create an alarm that goes off. And that alarm, depending on how disassociated you become and how dysregulated you become, that has the power to disconnect to your prefrontal cortex, where you have access to your critical thinking and decision making. So, actually, by practicing and repeating something that gets you focused, calm, and excited, so it's kind of those two elements together, we can then shift out of this primitive survival state into this focused, calm, centered place of, no, that's where I'm headed. This is where I'm coming from. So when we say something like, I am capable, that can actually reduce our levels of anxiety and it can actually enhance our problem solving skills. So it's all possible with creating a very short mantra that can actually be supportive. Now, what I would say to you, if you are still skeptical, why not try it? Why not try it for yourself? If you pick a very short phrase that actually has you feeling more uplifted, then on days that maybe you're feeling a little bit demotivated, just by repeating that and maybe matching that with some movement, what you're doing is strengthening those neural connections and it's giving you more availability to be able to shift out of where you are into a new state where you can start to take action and create more momentum. So I wanted to mention as well about the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton. So he works a lot with the biology of beliefs. So he is a biologist, and he's mapped a lot of the biology of beliefs. So how, on a cellular level, we generate these beliefs, in with a very cognitive way of seeing things. So Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how the thoughts and words create actual vibrations that influence our biology on a cellular level. So positive, empowering words, like I've mentioned, elevate our energetic state, whilst negative words actually have the opposite effect. So they suppress it. So anything where we're using our embodied approach, which is top down, bottom up. I ran a workshop last week where we talked about stress management. And did you know that 80% of the information actually gets passed from your body to your brain, whereas your brain actually only sends 20% of the information to your body? Why is that important? Well, it highlights the fact that if we can calm the state of being in our bodies, then we have the power to calm the mind. And when we calm the mind and calm the body, we can become more centered, focused, and more able to be in that growth mindset space to actually step outside our comfort zone, to push forward and to feel intrinsically motivated. And obviously, when we're intrinsically motivated, then we're not needing any external circumstances to be any kind of way for us to feel motivated. We can actually cultivate that from the inside out. So, how do you create and use your mantra? So, the characteristics of an effective mantra are that they're short, they're super specific, and they're emotionally resonant. So, like I've said, if you can put some feeling into it, if you're saying, I am capable, add that certainty, add that meaning, because you are communicating to your whole cells that you mean something. You're being authentic and real and genuine. You're not really faking it till you make it. No, you're actually finding that part of you to remind yourself how capable you are. So the other characteristics are that they are positive, they're uplifting, and they help strengthen you. So they're aligned with what you value. So you've got some core beliefs, core set of values. They're attached to how you work, maybe how you live your life, but the goal that you're specifically working on. If they're all interlinked, then you can make sure this mantra reminds you of that and strengthens it. Because by creating your mantra, you are evoking a sense of possibility and empowerment. So you're giving yourself a boost by repeating it. So practical examples might be, I am resilient and resourceful. Another one might be, I am growing stronger every day. Another one might be, every step is forward progress. Because sometimes we can get totally frustrated, can't we? That we can start feeling down on ourselves. We can maybe start to doubt, well, who cares about this? Why am I doing this? And often we find that if we're especially doing something that's stepping outside of our comfort zone, that's when our shitty committee that live in our brain start to speak to us even more loudly. And that can feel very demotivating. So hence why this mantra is something that we can keep as a tool in our back pockets to get back up. I will mention at this moment, in fact, it's very much inspired by Jenny from NetKnow. She talked about creating a lobster list. What's a lobster list? Well, she talked about the psychology and the biology of lobsters, that they kind of check each other out in terms of if they can, they're very hierarchical in their kind of power play. And they're always working out, well, it's like almost survival of the fittest, really. If you are projecting confidence and that you believe that you can, right, you're bringing up that, you walk around and you spread that perception. And what she was talking about with your own lobster list is to actually ask yourself some questions about, well, what have I accomplished? What are my characteristics, qualities, skills, strengths? Sometimes, a lot of the time, we forget what those are because we can be crippled by compromising ourselves and comparing ourselves to other people. We can start to focus on things that we don't have, things that we have not yet achieved, as opposed to things that we have achieved and everything that we are. Because I meet so many people who are wildly capable. And as a coach, it's my job to help reflect that back to people, my clients, and even people who are not my clients. as a fellow human being, I think that's so, so important to be able to lift people up and to remind them of their power, because we all do carry power. And so it is about rooting back into your meaning, your mindset, and utilizing your mantra, be that a lobster list, which is just reminding you of everything that you have achieved and how far you have come and where you're headed, and the fact that actually there's a whole world of possibility that lies outside of you that you haven't maybe tapped into yet. So when we're thinking about when and how to use a mantra, we could repeat it in the morning. So it can be when you first get up of a morning, your alarm might go off, and then you might say, if you jump out of bed in a very energized way, ready to start your day, or maybe you start by thinking, oh, I'll just have half an hour more and snooze. That you can actually just take a bit of time, and it can only might be a few minutes, to actually sit quietly with yourself and repeat your mantra. It could be that you repeat it silently in your mind, or it could be that you speak it to yourself in your bathroom mirror, but that you put your eye contact there and you say it with purpose. Remember, you are marrying the words that are energizing with your why, but with a feeling. Yeah. So you are reinforcing that neural pathway of belief that actually today is going to be this good day. So you are setting an intention, but you are driving the mantra from the first get-go as soon as you wake up in the morning. Another time might be in stressful moments where maybe you start to lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. So it may be something that you repeat to yourself when you maybe feel like you're losing your edge. Another time might be before you step into important tasks. So if you are maybe doing something that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, maybe, for example, this morning we talked a lot about before you go into a networking situation, maybe you find it awkward, maybe you find it a little bit disconcerting, especially if you don't know very many people that are in that room. So this is something that actually Johnny suggested: before you go into a networking event, get out your lobster list, go to the bathroom and repeat your mantra. Because when you are repeating it cognitively, when you give emotional resonance to it, you can actually involve some body language as well. So by rolling your shoulders up, back and down, giving yourself some diaphragmatic breathing to open up and to create space, that is going to actually shift your state. Because your state, as I've mentioned, creates your story, the story that you tell yourself. So being able to practice a mantra actually gives you an extra bit of oomph to be able to reset and reflect on where you are and where you want to go. So reset, reflect, redirect. So as a bit of an interactive exercise to craft your personal mantra, here's some prompts. So reflect on your why. Go back to week one and have a listen to how you get to the absolute essence of why you have set the goal that you've set. What are the core values that surround and support your goal? Why are you doing it? What's your mission? Next, identify maybe a limiting belief that is maybe detracting you away from believing that this is possible. So we often say name it to tame it, because once we say it out loud, we can actually then begin to question it. And when we question it, we can bring conscious awareness to realize that, well, okay, that's not a helpful thought. So we can choose a different thought. We can redirect our focus onto a belief. And again, we can look at, hold on, I have a list of accomplishments here that I have achieved, which suggests the very opposite to the limiting belief that my brain is telling me. Next, create a mantra that inspires action and aligns you with those values. So for example, what's one belief that would make achieving those goals really inevitable? Yeah. So being able to cultivate and ask yourself, well, what do I need to believe to really make that true? And once you start to focus on that, you can actually start to really bed into it and to feel into it and to immerse yourself in that feeling and belief. So it's over to you. How will you create your mantra and how can you practice it? When will you practice it? In the morning, during stressful moments, maybe before you tackle quite a challenging task. I'm going to make sure that the next few posts that I do talk about the science behind this whole concept of mantra creation, because as I've mentioned, it's far from a woo-woo concept. Done right, you are actually working with your neurology, your biology, and your psychology. It's a three-pronged approach to actually generate and cultivate empowering beliefs about what you're doing, which will then hugely influence how motivated you feel. And most of the time, once we make a start, we can actually start to build some momentum, and then the motivation happens naturally. So, super curious to know how you use your mantra. I'd love to hear if you do have a mantra that you practice, or maybe you want to create one and test it out this week. I'd love to hear what you come up with. Tune in for next week, where we talk about the next M of the 7 M's of motivation, which is metric. So we're going to be talking about the data side, the numeric value of being able to set ourselves a target to be motivational so that we can start to move towards our goals and a sense of real achievement, because that's the whole name of the game that we're trying to do here to turbocharge your motivation. So as ever, thank you for joining me. If you are watching this on replay, do let me know you stopped by. Do share your thoughts and comments, and share this if you would think this would be useful to somebody in your life. And with that, I will catch you next Tuesday for the 4th M of the 7 M's of motivation. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.